come to play. He's the biggest of them all. Step back, 4-3. Phoenix forced a turnover at halfway. Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Clock at 10. Adams the off balance. Oh, oh my goodness. 2 on the clock.
Hello and welcome back to the Basketball Fix podcast. My name is Ryan Tucker, the host of today's show. With me, as always, is Josh Higgins, but we have a new face and a new voice on Beyond the Buzzer this week. It is Clint Berto Burtonshaw from the Tasmanian Takeover, taking the spot from Jeremy Dark, who's gallivanting around Europe with his brother right now. Boys, welcome back to the show. And Berto, welcome to the show for the first time. How are things?
Thanks, boys, for having me. It's hopefully I'll do a better job than Jez, but we shall see. But nice to be hanging out with you lads.
Yeah, I think we'll definitely see, mate. But you've already got Ryan rattled. He's already talking about fisting, and instead of the fix, he's mate, we're trying to get sponsors right now, mate. This is not the way to do it. We're trying to keep this thing PG, but I guess we might have to see how we go early on, mate. But good start to the show.
What can I say, mate? When you got all this on your show, you're going to get tongue-tied. It's all good.
Exactly. The bar's set pretty low to begin with, and we're already over the top of it. So, well, it's a great show planned for today. Before we get into it, I'm just going to send a bit of a call out to our viewers and listeners to subscribe and also to share the content that you're getting from the Basketball Fix. Helps us out a lot to get the numbers up, and also that we know that you are enjoying what we're putting out. Josh, can you just tell the listeners and viewers as well about the fan-driven podcast that we have up and running right now?
Yeah, plenty going on. So obviously, like we mentioned earlier off the top, Berto's obviously come over from the Tasmanian Takeover, and him and JD are doing some incredible work there. I've jumped back on with Adam Batt at the Wildcat Wrap. So our first episode back released on Monday afternoon. And then you've also got the Breakers Breakdown, King's Table, and also the Hawks Hangout as well. So 5 incredible podcasts, with the Brisbane Bullets podcast just around the corner as well. They're recording their first episode this Saturday. So I'm looking forward to that. And before I hand back to yourself, Ryan, I just want to give a shameless little plug here as well. The Darius Days one-on-one interview that I did with him. Make sure you go check that episode out, because that guy, for a 25-year-old mate, is well and truly above his age. And there's a bit of an interesting comment in there about, we're talking about what sort of turned his season around. He had a bit of a mid-season form slump there. And there was one NBL comment that said, get Darius Days back in form, which has really got that man back in form as well. He had 22 points on the weekend. So go give that one a listen. He's an incredible young fella. He's got a lot of basketball ahead of him as well.
He was a quite well-spoken guy. I think the interview flowed really well. And to hear his insights, he wasn't holding back, really. He gave really good depth and insight into his life growing up and the way he kind of looks at basketball, both as a career and also as a game that he loves playing. It's a really good interview.
It is. And I think one thing as well, like I've obviously spoken to a few players, like I've spoken to Damian Martin, for example, and he's had an extensive career with multiple championships, defensive player of the years. But the way that 25-year-old man spoke, I just kept going back to that in the interview, that he's 25 years of age. It was just incredible. He's light years ahead of everything. He's the same age as me, mate, but holy heck, he's a lot more professional than me, isn't he?
Here we go. Trying to draw the parallels again, Josh. Trying to
6'7", 6 foot. There's not much parallel there, mate, I think.
Boys, there has been a lot going on in the NBL world of late. The rounds are still a bit split up. So we're recording on Monday morning, the 13th, and there are a couple of games being played today. One that's probably just finishing off as we're recording, but round 16 is well and truly going. And there has been some fantastic moments, and probably none bigger than the finish between the Jack Jumpers and the 36ers. Now, Bert, I want to throw to you on this one first, mate. What were your initial reactions watching this game?
Look, it was just a really great finish to a game that showed a lot of the Jack Jumpers' grit and grind. I mean, at first, watching the game, I'm sort of sitting there thinking, geez, this is looking a little bit sloppy. Are they going to get their act together? Sort of come around about the second quarter, I'm like, oh, this is a bit of a worry here. And then they got it together. And there were a few really cool points that came out of it, like, for instance, having a young development player, Nick Stoddart, come on and drop back-to-back threes. I mean, what a way to welcome himself into the NBL as far as I'm concerned. He came out. JD and I have been nicknaming him the Dart, and then funnily enough, on the commentary, they've called him. They're saying he's throwing darts. So we must have been onto something there. And then to just fight their way into overtime, and that overtime battle was just off hook. Like, it was absolutely fantastic. Look, I can see Josh is going to go for a whole bunch of numbers here, but one of the coolest parts, which I'm going to steal this thunder from what I know Josh has got lined up, but too bad, Josh, the bench points, 49 bench points. And what that shows me is that irrespective of the performance of the Jackies at the moment, which we'll get into, I know Josh is going to have a moment very soon. Bring it. We've got a deep bench, really, and that next man mentality is really important. And I mean, we're without Mags, we're without Sean McDonald, but we're still able to sit there and pull this win together. And I know there's been a lot of talk around whether the 8-win streak coming to an end, if that's the end of this and whatever else. I honestly believe that the reason why that 8-win streak even existed was because of just how we can next man up, step in, have a go. I'll talk a little bit later about a few things I'd like to see the Jackies do better if we're going to have a real serious run at the finals. But what this game did show is that we've still got the potential. We've still got fuel in the tank. And I really do believe that this was a game that could really demonstrate why we should be should be able to get into the play-ins at least. What I will say straight off the bat, though, if there was something ugly about it, Hummer's 3 throws, that was
with great wins, there's always some little bits of ugliness there. Now, Josh, Berto touched on the bench, and we've spoken at length this season about Adelaide's bench and the way that they're not contributing really in any great deal to the overall totals of the game, just in the scoring aspect. But I was starting to think in this game that maybe it's not all their fault. They're just not given the opportunity. They only played 8 guys in that game, and even the bench guys had very low minutes. And you could see the fatigue of the top 5, Kendrick Davis, Montrezl Harrell, and DJ. They were getting tired towards the end of the game, and their decision-making was fatigued. What are your thoughts around how this Adelaide team is structured and the use of their bench?
Well, like I said last week, mate, I think they've got the biggest and the best 4-headed monster in the league. Dejan Vasiljevic, Kendrick Davis, Montrezl Harrell, and I'm also missing the last one there off the top of my head.
Humphreys.
Isaac Humphreys, sorry. I thought I said him first. But that is probably the best 4-headed monster in the NBL. But like we mentioned last week, it drops off dramatically. Like, Lat Mayen is probably the most consistent next best player, essentially. It should be Jarrell Martin, though, as your third import. I still think, and I was having a shower a couple of days ago, and this is how much I'm just too involved in the NBL. I'm just not going to go anywhere else besides this, boys. But I was in the shower, and I was thinking, once they signed Montrezl Harrell, why didn't they release Jarrell Martin? Because they could have gone out and signed a solid 3-man. I think the perfect fit, I don't know if you guys remember Justin Simons back in the day, former Illawarra Hawk and Sydney King player. That would have been the perfect fit for them. A 3-and-D guy who might give you 10 points per game, but can go and shut down a Bryce Cotton, can go and shut down a Jalen Adams, he can go and shut down an Xavier Cooks, he got the size. That would have been the perfect mold of sort of player to go pick up, but they've got left with Jarrell Martin, who has been injury prone, is still severely unfit, and he's not really giving them what they need. He's going in happily, just going in through shooting really poor 3-point shots, and I think it's obviously hurting their depth as well. Nick Marshall, I think, needs to get out of there. He could be the next Jack McVeigh or the next Anthony Drimmick. Get him over to Tassie, I think, is probably the best way, and let him sort of flourish under Scott Roth. You know what they like. They love all the ex-castaways and I guess the guys who don't get an opportunity at their particular club. But I think Jason Gadee's flying under the radar, boys. I think he's averaging, a decent amount of points per game. It's obviously the leadership that's the most important part with Jason Gadee. But again, though, he's having to do too much with his second unit. But Ryan, it goes back to your point, though, mate. They're not getting much of an opportunity. Most of the starters play between 38 and 42 minutes in that particular game. I know it went to overtime, but still, though, that is a massive amount of games for all 5 of your starters to be playing. And especially with Lat Mayen, for example, I know I keep going back to him, but he's had question marks around him for the whole entire season with Coach Mike Wells as well. So, I know it's obviously a tough one to obviously win games with not much depth, but I think right now when I sit here, I look at them in 8th position and I go, it's probably just about right. I know you've been harping on it all year, Ryan, but I still think the top end of talent is good enough to win a championship. It's just a really deep fall off that is really going to hurt them. But still, I've seen stranger things happen. They play the Perth Wildcats twice in Perth to end the season. And I think it's going to be a big little telling sign there if they are to make the finals as well.
But it's refreshing to hear this from Josh because he is a closet Adelaide supporter. You know, he always talks about Perth, but you know, deep down he has this soft spot for the 36ers, and it is a little bit refreshing having this honesty about his a team that's close to his heart. Now, boys, Majok Deng was clutch in this game. You know, I've gone back and watched this process a couple of times. First off, in regular time, his plays there, and then obviously towards the end of the overtime as well. It's just, I mean, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it again. It was just so dynamic, so dominant. He was there, and he's like, I'm taking this game by the scruff of the neck, and nobody is going to stop me. But what did you know, from a Tasmania supporters perspective, this guy hasn't really taken over a game in this aspect before. What was it like seeing this from a person that has kind of been there and abouts, and then has now taken that leap to dominate a game?
Look, I think we saw it in the championship last season. Deng came out and turned around and said, he's the forgotten one. Well, he's not bloody well forgotten anymore. He is fantastic. He's the sort of player that I think has really flourished under Roth's system and in this team. I mean, Roth mentioned it in the presser 1 or 2 games ago, how between the likes of Deng, Tarangi, these are players that were pretty much left on the bench waiting for an opportunity, getting an opportunity with the Jackies, and away they go. And I think what we're really starting to see here, Deng just is absolutely flourishing. And given the opportunity, he's really starting to step up to the plate as a real star. We're starting to see that from Tarangi as well. And what I'm really liking is they're not trying to come out and be a one-man army. They know that they are part of a team. They're really trying to play with the team, but then they're also starting to seize their opportunities. And Deng is absolutely doing it. There's nothing more impressive than watching his up there, knees around the ears type dunk, or just the explosion he has. And that little KD shuffle he does just before his free throws always looks really nice, because you can almost bet money on that one. It's going to be a good shot.
Yeah, there's so much more to speak about in from that game, but we'll leave that to the Tasmanian takeover to dive more into it. Now, the backup game after that, and I on the basketballfix.com, I wrote about that game, and I said it's going to be a letdown spot for Tasmania up against Perth. The emotion that came out of that win over Adelaide just would have taken so much energy, not only out of the players, but out of the crowd as well. And Tassie are a very strong team at home, but it was a spot welcoming in the highest scoring team in the league over the last 10 games, the Perth Wildcats. And Josh, they just came in and dominated that game on the scoring end from the get-go.
Oh, Berto, here we go, mate. We get to sort of ding, ding, ding. The bell's on, the gloves are on. We're ready to go, mate. But where was Majok Deng in this game, mate? Let's start there. 4 points, 0 of 4 from the field, 4 of 4 from the free throw line. So didn't even score, I guess, from a field goal perspective as well. But no, mate, this was an absolute domination. I've been looking forward to chatting about this. As soon as we heard Berto was coming on the show, mate, I thought I sort of penciled this game in and thought, if we win this one, we'll talk about this one. If we lose this one, we'll completely scrap it all together, mate. And we absolutely dominated
good on
the Tasmanian Jack Jumpers, 105-73. And I think the key stats for me is when I look at a bit of a standpoint, in terms of what I see as a blueprint to beat the Tasmanian Jack Jumpers, it's the points in the paint. So the Wildcats had 50 points in the paint compared to the Jack Jumpers 34. And it was a really, really telling sign early on. I think early on the Jackies were pretty good, and that's where we saw Perth absolutely shoot out the gate from the three-point line. Bryce finished with 15 points on 5 of 8 shooting in the first quarter, and really just started to flex his muscles a lot. But it just really came down to the points in the paint and also fast break points as well. The Wildcats outscored the Jackies 23-8 in that particular category as well. So when we're talking about the blueprint to beat the Jack Jumpers, again, you don't see it too often with Scott Roth coach teams where you can really push the pace and really unsettle them defensively. I think it's obviously a really, really good thing to look forward to. But when we look at the spread for the Perth Wildcats, you had 5 guys in double digits. So Bryce Cotton had 32 points and 9 assists. What a game again. Just really, I guess, stretching that margin now between, the first candidate in the MVP conversation to the second candidate as well. Then you had, obviously, Dylan Windler had 15 points, 11 rebounds. You had Hiram Harris with 12 points, Keanu Pinda with 10 points, and Benny Henshaw with 10 points as well. So when we touch on, bench depth, I guess you could say, with the Tasmanian Jack Jumpers, again, little shot to you here, Berto. Well, every Wildcat on the roster scored a point in this particular game. So, that is a massive achievement, obviously, for the boys. I know they played him late. I know it was a summer shootout game. It looked like John really stopped caring about the summer shootout game late. He just wanted to get some repetition in some of these guys like Dante Russo-Nance, even Hiram Harris, Michael Harris as well. It was good to see those boys getting a bit of a chance. But from a Perth Wildcats perspective, this game is what they needed. One more game away now from home against the Brisbane Bullets, and then they have 5 straight games at RSC Arena before going to Sydney and then finishing the season at RSC Arena. So when we're touching on this ladder, mate, and I've done the ladder predictor, and I try to be unbiased as possible, I've still got the Wildcats finishing at 3rd, though. So they're right where they are right now. I've got Illawarra and Melbourne finishing top 2. But it's going to be an incredible end to the season, boys. And I'm looking forward to getting to RSC Arena on Friday night to watch them dominate the Adelaide 36ers.
Well, just on those 2 teams there, the 36ers and the Hawks, they're playing right now, and it is 31-19 to Adelaide in the first quarter. So another maybe a clean sweep on the cards for the 36ers against my beloved Hawks.
Teams.
Berto, the game obviously not a fantastic one for Tasmania. They were a little bit tired coming into it, as we kind of spoke about. The points in the paint. Can you just kind of give us a bit of thoughts from your perspective about, is this a spot where they're missing Mags and maybe that depth at the center spot?
Yeah, look, I really do believe so. Taking a look at it, apart from the fact that, 34 points in paint versus the 50 from the Wildcats, Windler's in there hitting up 4 blocks, and that's not going to help us at all. The most of the guys who were making the points in this game, they're outside shooters, or they're coming in ever so close to the key, but they're not actually getting into the paint. This is where Mags would have just driven straight to the ring, got up around it, done his big Donkey Kong hang, and the job was done. And that's where we miss it. We really do. You're right about what you were saying about Deng. That's something that Deng isn't too bad at doing, getting in there, and I'm surprised we didn't see a little bit more of that. But look, there wasn't a lot that was great from the Jack Jumpers' perspective for this game, and I don't believe it's a great excuse to say they were tired, but it was evident. You could see they were some really tired bodies. They were banged around a little bit there, but there was some positives out of this. And one of the positives being that all the DPs actually got some minutes, which was fantastic. We've been able to see Nick Stoddart play. We've seen Brody Nunn play, I might have been in the preseason from memory. But, one of the DPs I've been longing to see on the court, just to see how he goes, has been Archie Woodall. And he's our DP who's in the center position, and he hasn't seen the light of day yet. Being able to see him come out there, he got a few points up there. I think it was 5 points, something like that. Dropped the 3, which was out of nowhere. Got some rebounds, which was great. But whilst they weren't significant numbers, what I saw was a real opportunity where Roth might be able to call on him to give the likes of Fabs and GG a bit of relief, which I think is going to be really important. If we do make it into the play-ins, it's all going to be stepped up to another level. Now, if we do make it to play-ins, I'm hopeful, very hopeful, that we got Mags back. But what if he does get injured again? Or what if they have to limit his minutes? It'd be nice to be able to not just have Fabs in there. One of the things I will say with Fabs is, he got us through in the championship round in their first season. But he's looking a lot more trim, taut, and terrific, if you will. I think back then when he was in the first season, he was looking a little more bulky, and that kind of helps when you're trying to just stand there and be a brick wall to someone coming down, which is something we're lacking a little bit too. So, it wasn't a great game. One I'd like to rather forget, and I'm sure they would too. I wanted to come in here being able to sling shit at Josh and, make fun of the Perth kitty cats and all that, but we're about as effective as ants under a magnifying glass, so I think I'll just eat my hat and I'll have a lovely moan about it on Tasmanian Takeover.
Well, it's good that you have that platform to be able to do that. Josh, we'll just
I've got to
quickly
have
touch
somewhere to
on.
whinge.
Josh, should quickly touch on the Brisbane Bullets as well. They went down in the game against Southeast Melbourne over the weekend, and a couple of players actually went down with injury there. You had already Tyrell Harrison not playing the game. I think did Deng Adel get hurt, but also Bannon got hurt. I think it was 3 players in that game didn't finish the game because of injury. Brisbane cooked.
Yeah, I think they're cooked, mate. I think that's done now in terms of playoff aspirations. We saw it last year. I did once again, the ladder predictor. I've got them still finishing exactly where they are right now. They're 7th. And, you've got to look back to, a couple of months ago, they won 5 of 6. And then since then have only won 1 of 5. So, that's just a contrast of just completely altering game styles and obviously wins and that sort of stuff as well. And they knocked off, Melbourne, for example. They knocked off the Perth Wildcats in that run as well. They knocked off Southeast and Phoenix. Then they've gone on to lose to some of these quite poor teams. And even on the weekend, Southeast and Phoenix, to go out down by 20 points, it was that last quarter that was just horrific, 36-18. But they lost Derek Walton Jr. early on in the game, very, very early to that hamstring injury as well. And he's been a glue guy for the Phoenix over the past couple of weeks. So, I just think it's going to be a very tough road now for them. I think the one guy who I feel somewhat sorry for is Casey Prather, 21 points, 11 rebounds again on the weekend. But it just did show, though, that I think they were expecting a lot more out of Rocco. And I'm not a Rocco hater. I've had people reach out to me saying you don't like Rocco. No, I do like Rocco, and I want the best for him. But he's not a genuine backup in the NBL just yet. He's undersized in terms of muscle strength. I know he's a 7'3" center, but he's not capable of playing in the post, which he only plays right now. So, for them to lose Tyrell Harrison, it put all the pressure on Bannon, who had an outstanding game, 23 points and 9 rebounds. But then obviously Deng Adel goes down and Rocco Zakarsky needs to play. Well, Rocco just got killed by Matt Hurt and Jordan Hunter, 2 of the premier centers in the NBL. So I just think it's contrasting game styles. I know Justin Schuller again has once again come out saying, we can only really do with what we've got and all this sort of stuff. And they're blaming the court conditions. Apparently there was dew on the court. We're not playing in Ballarat or something like that, mate, on a Saturday with the football. We're playing we're playing an indoor sport, mate, all right? There can't be too much dew around. I know it's Melbourne, all right? There can't be that bloody hot. But, it's going to be interesting. I'm really excited to see, obviously, what this team can do in the future because they've still got a nice young core of talent. I think Casey Prather will stay because his missus is very ingrained in the community, I guess you could say. And it was a major reason as to why she came over because she could do her sports commentary with the NBL. So, I don't know. There's just too many questions for me with the Brisbane Bullets for sure.
All right. Well, lots more. You had a final thought there, Berto?
Just a bit of a conspiracy theory. So the Bullets lose to Southeast Melbourne because they reckon it was dew on the court. Southeast Melbourne came down and beat the Jack Jumpers because the roof started to leak. I'm wondering if Southeast is starting to make a watery condition for themselves.
It's a bit like the San Antonio Spurs back in the day, mate, where they left the aircon on in terms of playing in the NBA Finals, and LeBron got cramped for the first time in his career. Another conspiracy
there you go. There you go. So there you go. They may not be the phoenix rising from fire. They might be the phoenix rising from water. I don't know.
Well, there you go.
This is the insight we get from Berto. I'm loving it.
That's perfect. Alberto, it is time. This time of the episode, we hand over the reins to Josh, and this segment's called Guess Who. Now, the person that you're filling in for is absolutely atrocious at guessing this, but Josh has started off with a pretty easy one this time around. Josh, I'll leave it over to you, mate.
Yeah, I guess we've got to try and pump Berto up a little bit, mate. We want him to come back on the show eventually one day and also have a bit of fun with all this. But yes, mate, like you said, Jeremy is absolutely horrible, but we'll give him his credit. 2 of the past 3 as well, so he's on a bit of fire form at the moment. But I will, like I said last week, say he's 2 of 16 on the year, mate, so he's still fucking pretty horrible. But anyways, mate, all right, let's get into it, Berto. I'm a Sudanese player. I'm a South Sudanese player. Currently, I'm averaging just over 13 points per game. I have appeared on the Basketball Fix a couple of times, and that can be in a couple of different avenues as well. I think that's probably the biggest hint you can get there as well. Maybe this one as well. I'm also in contention for the 6th Man of the Year. We won't be going to a short break today, mate, but what are your first initial thoughts? Because I think Ryan's got this one butter and cream, but what are you thinking, Berto?
Kawat Noi.
Kawat Noi, mate. Easy as that. Jeremy Dark, I hope you're listening right now and you're absolutely ashamed of yourself, mate. All right, we're replacing you with a better Tasmanian Jack Jumper supporter, a better Guess Who supporter, and a better beard. So we'll run with that, Berto. But what a guess there, mate. Kawatnoi, nice and easy to start yourself off, mate, on Beyond the Buzzer.
Beautiful. Love it. I'm glad I was able to represent on that one. I was a bit worried that I'd shit in the bed.
You did well. We're going to take a quick break. We'll put it in post-production, but we'll take a quick break, come back and get into underrated players in the NBL. Okay, now we're back, boys, and it is time to talk about underrated players in the NBL, and a great time of the season to do it as well, because we've got quite a few games under the belt, and teams now starting to get into their playoff rotations as we peak towards the top end, the pointy end of the season. Josh, I want to go to you first. Who is your most underrated player in the NBL this season?
Yeah, well, I love this debate because everyone's talking about who's the MVP. Everyone's talking about who's the sixth man of the year, who's the defensive player of the year. But let's go a little bit deeper. You know, who is the most underrated player in the NBL? So this is a bit of a shame here, but we've both decided to pick players from our own bloody team. So I've gone with Dylan Windler. So I genuinely think this guy is flying under the radar. So averages this year of 12.1 points per game, 6.8 rebounds, 2.1 assists, 1.3 steals, 0.9 blocks. Also shooting the ball at 45% from the field and 40% from the three-point line. Now, when we go a little bit deeper with Dylan, this is where we start to see his importance to the Wildcats. So he's had a couple of injury games this year, but when he's on the court and has played a game for the Wildcats, which he always has started, they're 13 wins and 6 losses, which is the best record in terms of win and losses for any Perth Wildcat player. Now, when we go one step deeper as well, that magical number PP40, which is obviously the analytical number for points per 40 minutes that the team scores when this particular player is on the court. He ranks 5th in the NBL, averaging 104.1 points per game. So he's not only a relatively good defender, but he's also really helping this team on offense. And I spoke about this on the Wildcat Wrap. Go check that episode now if you want to listen to a bit more Wildcats talk. But he sat down with Craig O'Donoghue from the West Australian a couple of weeks ago and spoke about how tough it has been adjusting from being the 8th or 9th guy on an NBA roster to being the 2nd or 3rd guy on an NBL roster. And that's a massive jump. You're going from a role player to the star player or the superstar player, whatever way you want to look at it. So for him to come in and sort of, I guess, handle it the way he has, I know he's taken a little bit longer than some of these other imports to sort of flourish, but these statistics are genuinely flying under the radar. And like I said, a solid defender. He can guard from, I think, 1 to 4, and he can also guard these undersized 5s as well. Guys like on the weekend, he was on Fabian Krislovic at certain times. He was on Ian Hummer as well. He was on those sort of guys, a lot stronger and a lot bigger, but he still held his own as well. Now, we'll go to the last little stat here as well, just to sort of nail home, I think, his importance to this Perth Wildcats team and his underratedness. He's a plus 7.4 when he's on the court, and when he's off, he's a negative 2.8. So the negative 2.8 is only just behind Christian Doolittle. So that's when you're looking at the most important players on the Wildcats team. When he's off the court, the Wildcats are 2 and nearly 3 points worse off. But when he's on the court, though, they're a 7.5 point swing. So that is a major swing. It's up there in the NBL. I believe he was ranked in the top 20 for plus as well. So again, flying under the radar. I know all the talk gets put on Bryce Cotton, and I can completely understand why. Obviously, Christian Doolittle was copying all the talk early on. But this guy is genuinely flying under the radar as one of the most underrated players in the NBL this season.
But I was trying that whole time he was talking, trying to pick holes in the stats or trying to figure something out to come back with. I'm coming up empty, mate. Do you have anything to kind of hit back against Josh on those numbers?
No, they're impressive stats. And look, I took a bit of a look because I'll get into my pick in a minute. And there's some similar stats there, and I can't nerd out like Josh just did with the stats. I mean, you're pulling out numbers, and I'm sitting there going, are they real numbers and letters, or are you just making shit up? But anyway, but no, I think you've really got a valid point there for a player that is flying under the radar. And I must admit, watching him the other night, I was impressed. You know, a couple of times I know I'll see with one of my mates and going, who the bloody hell's that? Where'd he come from? So, no, I really do think you're on a good point there. Look, Josh is right. We both picked from our own teams. And I'm not trying to make this Tasmanian Takeover 2.0, but, you know, too bad, too sad. I'm picking Sean McDonald. Shawnee Mac, it's hard to believe that last year he was still considered a development player. He's then been off with injury at the start of the season, and we felt it. And you might sit there and go, really? You felt it that much with him being off? But yeah, as soon as he came back, the team started to really glue together. And we started to really get a bit of momentum about us. You could start to see that the team was really firing on all cylinders. And this is on the back of the fact that, yes, we did lose a huge piece in our team with Jack McVeigh heading over to the NBL. When we're talking stats here, 11.2 points, 3.8 assists, 2.9 rebounds, 0.6 steals. All right, so he's not stealing too much, but he's shooting 47% from the field, 45% from the three-point line. I mean, if he goes to the three-point line, it's just about money. And I think there's only been a couple of games where you sat there and gone, "Oh, you better go to Specsavers." I'm impressed with the kid, and he's only young. He's got plenty of basketball ahead of him, and providing his injuries don't seem to cause him a lot more problems, which unfortunately we are suffering from that at the moment. His foot's been injured. We've now potentially lost him for the whole of the season. When I say whole of the season, they've been a little bit coy as to whether that's just, regular season or post. I think he is going to be a massive asset to the Jack Jumpers, hopefully for a long time, if not whatever team he ends up on. And I really do believe at some point he will no longer be considered underrated, but he may even be in MVP contentions in future years. So watch out, Brycey. We're working on someone who can maybe hopefully shoot the lights out over you when you start to wear out a little bit.
Yeah, I think there's few people in the league this year that have had such a difference or made such a difference to their team when from being injured or off the court or not being involved to coming on. And Shorty Mack has been instrumental to the resurgence of the Jack Jumpers through the midway point of the season. Boys, I have some thoughts, but you know what? We got to move on to some more segments. I was going to throw out Owen Foxwell. I think he's been a pretty underrated player this season for Southeast Melbourne. We're going to take another quick break, and we'll come back and get into In the Gun, a segment that we haven't had for a couple of weeks. So we'll take a quick break, come back with In the Gun. Okay, now we're back, and it is time for In the Gun, a pretty explosive segment on the Basketball Fix Beyond the Buzzer podcast. Josh, I hand over to you, mate.
Yes, In the Gun, Berto. So obviously, welcome to the show. We're going to try and get some controversy out of you as well. And looking forward to seeing who you've put in the gun. But In the Gun, all right, for anyone who hasn't listened to the show before, it's essentially a player, a coach, a franchise, anyone that you think needs a bit of a rev up, a bit of a kick up the arse, a bit of a come on, let's get going towards the back end of the season as well. So, Berto, I'm going to start with you, mate, because I'm looking forward to mine, and I have been all day. And we actually picked the same person originally who in the gun. And I actually messaged you and I said, damn, you've taken who I want, but I'll pick someone else. But thank God you've decided to change back to who you want. But Berto, mate, who is in the gun for you?
Yeah, look, I've put the whole of the Tasmanian Jack Jumpers in the gun. Ooh. Now, I was back and forward on this one because I don't want to feel like I'm hating on the boys, and this is with much love. And the reason why I'm doing it is I don't think this necessarily is a kick up the arse as much as a boys, grit and grind, stay fast, put that Perth Wildcats game aside, and now you've got no Mags, you've got no Shawnee Mack. We need Milt and JC to step up. Now, I'm one who is an absolute built defender. I know that when he's not shooting, he's doing everything else on the court. He is an absolute court general. Some might say he was the replacement for Majet. But at this present point in time, you sit there and you play around with that Mitsubishi ladder predictor business, and it doesn't take much to watch the Jackies slip from 6 to out. And the way we're going to be able to do this is to sit there and go into our next few games. We've got 6 games to go. We're going to have to pull a few wins. And what concerns me, we've got Breakers coming up next. So far, it's been all our way. Last 3 games against them, win, win, win. Kings, 2 losses. Now, I'm going to be at Kudos Arena on the 19th. And I'll tell you what, we better pull a win, boys. So get your fingers out for Alberto, because we're going to need this. We cannot let the Kings go for a streak. Phoenix, they seem to be our kryptonite. This concerns me. Hawks, they again also have our number. We've got 2 losses against them. We cannot let the Hawks hang out, get bragging rights. It'll give me the shits. And then we get into United and Taipans. This could be where we could pull some wins here. United, we've got 2 wins, 1 loss. There is no reason why we can't whoop their ass one more time just for good measure. This is for bragging rights, boys. And Taipans, it's 50-50. Well, they're at the bottom of the ladder, and I think we need to end strong. Let's just stomp the snakes and sit there and actually make sure we're secure into the play-ins. Now, I have no doubt that once we get into the play-ins, we're going to playoffs because we somehow managed to step it up to a whole nother gear. Finally, we need to get Hummer into a Dr. Dish shooting space and just practicing that free throw. It's ugly. I say that from someone who can barely throw a free throw to save my life. Humdog, get in there. Practice, because I'm loving your defense, but you know they're going to foul you. They've seen this. They've seen that you're not real great at the stripe. They're going to foul you to almost guarantee a couple of lost points. Clean all that up. We should be all right. But we do have mostly road games as well, so make sure you get plenty of sleep, take your vitamins, do all that sort of jazz, and carry on. That's the most important thing.
Big Daddy giving the sound advice there to the boys. Josh, I think you have a pretty explosive person in the gun this week as well.
Oh, Birdo, mate, these in the guns, you got to get up and about and you got to dig your teeth in. You got to look like you want to kill someone. And I absolutely want to end Brian Goorjian right now. You have arguably got the best talented roster that you have got. And we've ever seen, I think, in the NBL. What was the comments at the start of the years, boys? This is the most exciting, talented roster in NBL history. They are going to be favourites by far. This team has been struggling and they're still first or second favourites. That is how good this team is because the bookies know it's only going to take a couple of games for this team to get rolling and they can win an NBL championship. And that is as serious as it is. And, I know they've lost Jalen Galloway, okay? Big loss, 100%. But at the start of the year, he wasn't even playing. Okay, he was still on his way back from America from the NBA programs and all that sort of stuff as well. Playing in the NBA Summer League, doing everything possible, right? You've still got Jalen Adams. You've still got Xavier Cooks. Right, they are 2 of the best stars in the game. We're going to see one of those guys feature. Alex Tui, yes, 100%. But in terms of like those bolstering stars, MVP candidates, they are up there in probably the top 5 to 10 in that particular category. You've got Alex Tui, like you said. You've got Kawat Noi coming off the bench, dominating for this particular team. And hey, Gorge, what about this guy called, is it Space Cam Oliver? What's his name? What's his name? He sits down at the end of the bench. He plays 11 flipping minutes. And what does he do when you give him a chance? 15 points, 17 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, and a block. And they win the game. He is a bona fide winner. He doesn't understand what he's got at his disposal. Ryan and I spoke about it at the start of the year. He was my pick for MVP of the league. All right. All I've got to go back to is the last time that he played in the NBL, 17.2 points per game, 10 rebounds per game, 1 block per game, shooting the ball at over 50% from the field. You have got one of the best players in NBL at the moment. If I could pick someone to come onto the Perth Wildcats team, I would be picking Cam Oliver, to be honest with you, over majority of the people. Because you don't know what you've got. I just don't understand. You've got one of the most stacked rosters in NBL history. I'm sick of hearing Brian Goorjian is the best Australian coach of all time. Yes, he was the best Australian coach of all time. Yeah. He fell off from the Boomers. He's now falling off in the NBL. You've now signed him for 3 years. So it's only going to get worse from here. The dementia is starting to come through. I'm sorry, Goorjian. I'm not trying to be disrespectful here, mate. But you're not understanding what is going on in the NBL world. And I'm pretty sure this is going to be clipped over everywhere. I'm really, really sorry. We're trying to keep this thing as uncontroversial as possible. But Brian Goorjian,
no, you're not.
You need to pull the finger out, mate, in the gun, all right? You're in the gun, mate. Cop that one for sure.
This is why I gave up and gave it to you, mate, because in all honesty, it's not only in the gun. You're sitting there firing a shotgun with spray everywhere, man. Bullets flying, pellets flying. Oh, my God.
I just got to say, I've got this special spot for Cam Oliver, and I would love to sit down and talk to him after the season's done, where he can probably reveal what was actually going on for this entire season, because they keep saying everything's fine, everything's fine. Well, Gorge is whinging about him being in the starting lineup. He then goes to the bench and plays with the whole starters for the whole game and has 15, 17, 2, 2, and 1. Like, you're not getting something out of him. You're not motivating him right. You're not doing something right. There's something, and there's a massive disconnect between this team because we're talking about Illawarra as the best team every week. Their roster is very, very deep. Don't get me wrong, but this roster's deeper. They have got some players who aren't playing to the level. Isaiah Leartha's a guy who was dominant last year. Yeah. I need to stop, Ryan. This isn't even my team, and I'm getting more fired up about the Kings a little while sometimes.
The Kings certainly should be up there. They should be certainly doing a lot more. I mean, look, it's no secret. There's purple still runs through my vein, being an ex-Sydney side. In fact, I'm almost giving it up on the camera there. You can see the Kings ball in the background. I do love the Kings. They are my set. Look, I love my two home teams, Sydney, Tassie. And to see that they are not top of the pops is really frustrating. And to see that at times, well, I think Derek Rucker said it best. Sydney are playing winning basketball without looking good. This team should look bloody good. They look like an absolute NBA level team when they were playing under what's Captain Kiki, my board thingos. What's his name? Chase Buford. Yeah, under Buford. You know, they look, I remember watching them play and thinking, my God, if you squint, they almost look and play like an NBA team. And now they just seem like there's talent there, but they're just not. Yeah, I get your frustrations, Josh. I really do.
I think they're genuinely playing as a wish version of what we thought they were going to be. It's like a wish or Timo version. You know, like you had these expectations of a championship level and caliber team, and you've copped a wish version where they're just going to scrape into the top 4 or top 6.
Yeah. Boys, they're 1-7 against top 4 teams this season. So that's Perth, Melbourne, and Illawarra. They have some problems they need to sort out if they want to go deep into the postseason. Now, boys, it is time for us to get into the Higgins Hot 10, the 5-1 rankings that we follow up from last week's podcast. Josh, I'll hand it over to you, mate. 5-1. Who do you have in your top 5 plays this season?
Yeah, so we'll quickly just recap from 10 to 6, just so everyone's aware. And if Berto hasn't seen it already and wants to probably start boiling in his blood, I reckon, pretty shortly. But Matt Hurt was number 10, Xavier Cook's number 9, Chris Goulding, number 8. Some people copped me a little criticism for their 42 points in the game just finished, boys, against the Breakers, so he's back in some good form. Parker Jackson Cartwright, number 7, and Kendrick Davis, number 6. So that's also another bit of controversy, but I think it's definitely starting to come to fruition. But the top 5, this is as stacked of a top 5 as there possibly can be. So coming in at number 5 is Montrezl Harrell. So 19.5 points per game, 8.9 rebounds, 1.7 assists, 1 block, shooting at 54% from the field. Now, true shooting percentage, he's got that at 59.3%, which is in the top 25 of the league. You obviously go down a little bit further as well, like I spoke about, PP40 and MP40. So PP40, just so we're aware again, is the amount of points that your team scores when you're on the court per 40 minutes. And MP40 is the most points that the opposition scores when you're on the court as well per 40 minutes. So Montrezl Harrell ranks in the top 25 for when he's on the court, so essentially the offensive rating. And the defensive ranking goes down a little bit, but he's in the top 40 still, and that is with an average of 91 points per game, which is still pretty good compared to some of the rest of the guys in the league as well. Now, his plus-minus has been, I think, the biggest thing over his whole entire NBL season. He's got a differential of plus-minus of 11.2 on the on and off differential, so that's a pretty astounding number. He's 3.3, so he's a plus 3.3 when he's on, and he's a negative 7.8 when he's off. So that is just an outstanding sort of statistic there when you are talking about the importance of this particular guy. But he is a bona fide superstar in the NBL, and he deserves to be at number 5 on this list. Now, the next guy that we're going to speak about actually dropped a spot over the weekend, and that is Jalen Adams. So Jalen Adams, 18.2 points per game, 4.1 rebounds per game, 6.4 assists, 41% from the field, and also 1.9 steals per game. Now, I'm touching on his defensive rating. He currently is ranked at 18 in the MP40 statistic. When he's on the court, the Sydney Kings are allowing 86 points per game. And that does come down to the fact that whilst a lot of these teams have been scoring massive amounts against oppositions, a lot of these teams also have struggled to score against Sydney. That's why they've kept themselves in plenty of these games. If you go look at the top sort of 20 to 5 to 30, it's very Tasmanian jack jumpers orientated, which we'd all expect, and also Sydney Kings as well, because both of those teams have been holding their opponents to low totals. But when you go to the offensive end as well, he's ranked at 31st on the offensive rating with 95 points per game. And his on-off differential is 9.6, which is the 4th best in the league. And it goes with the usage rate as well, 28.4, which is obviously a pretty incredible usage rate, which at this stage was 2nd in the NBL as well. So really, really good statistics. Had a bit of a slight drop-off. Last week's statistics and games were quite disappointing for a number of reasons, but he is a genuine superstar in the competition who deserves to be in the top 5 list, I think, over Kendrick Davis. I know that seems controversial to some people, but he has definitely got it rolling, and they're also winning games as well. So, the statistics are a little bit different in terms of both of them, but obviously I think you got to count winning over anything else firstly, in my opinion anyways. Then, number 3, we have got Casey Prather. What a comeback story this guy has been. He has been an absolute dominant force in the NBL. 20.4 points per game, 5.1 rebounds, 2.1 assists, 1 steal, 50% from the field. He's also 47% from the three-point line. That is incredible. And he doesn't not shoot them. He shoots about 5 or 6 a game. So to be going at 50%, that's just incredible statistics as well. His usage rates is 8th in the NBL with 27, which again, he is converting 27 shots per 100 in per game as well. So that's sort of a pretty good statistic there. The PP40, he is 15th in the league with 98.5 points per game when he's on the court. And also, obviously, it drops quite a bit when he's defensively because the Bullets are quite poor of a defensive team. He's ranked 78th defensively. But again, like I said, you've sort of got to counteract that a little bit with how bad the Brisbane Bullets have been defensively as a whole unit. When you go into his sort of singular stats, it's actually not as bad as that, but I haven't got them off the top of my head here. And also true shooting percentage as well. Like we mentioned, obviously, his shooting percentages are really, really high, but he's also 12th in the league for true shooting percentage at 62% per shots that are going in. So incredible numbers, I think, for Casey, for a team that's outside of the play-in sort of looking in. I know that's probably a bit of a tough one for some people to sort of, maybe get around or anything like that, but over the past 11 games, he's averaging 26.7 points per game. So obviously that's a pretty good statistic there. Now, number 2, as we're running out of time rapidly, we've got Trey Kell. Now, best team in the NBL and the best player on that particular team. You've got to be in the top 3, I think, and you're an MVP candidate player. 18.4 points per game, 3.6 rebounds, 3.8 assists, 1.2 steals, 44% from the field, 19th in the league for true shooting percentage with 61%. He's also 2nd in the league for plus minus as a plus 7.6 when he's on the court. And also as well, those magic numbers, PP40, he's 9th in the league as well when he's on the court for the offensive rating. The Hawks are scoring 101 points when he's playing on the court as well. So a massive rating there, obviously, for Trey Kell, and he's 37th when we're talking about defense as well. So a guy who's typically an offensive player is still doing the job on the defensive end. But it only leaves one man, I think, at the top, and I don't think it's much of a surprise to anyone. I think the way that we're seeing this guy, I know some of his defensive stats aren't that great, but you're seeing an all-time offensive flurry from Mr. BC Bryce Cotton. 27 points per game at the moment, 4.1 assists, 49% from the field, 44.5% from the three-point line. Now, when we go a bit deeper, he's 8th in the competition for points per 40 minutes. The Wildcats are averaging 102 points per game when he's on the court. You go into his usage, 28.2 scoring opportunities and chances that he converts per 100 possessions, and his true shooting percentage, boys, 3rd in the league. That is where we're starting to see these genuine scorers start to dominate. 66% from the field as a true shooting performance as well. And one little stat that I threw in here as well, which is way the Wildcats need to play, is the fast break points. He's actually 1st in the league for fast break points with 4.3 points per game. So a bit of a different stat there. I don't think that obviously is going to sway people like, if they had Bryce at 3, he's leading the league in fast break points. But it's a nice little stat there, I think, for the Perth Wildcats fans. But Birdo, mate, I'll throw to you first. I think, first timer on the show, you get first dibs here. What are your thoughts on the top 5?
Look, top 5, I think you've got it. I mean, I would have liked to have seen Xavier up there a little bit higher. The X-Men, I really do think could have slipped into your top 5, but then the question would be, well, who do you drop out? Yeah, I think you've nailed it. I really do. And you've certainly got into the stats, and I'll tell you what, you can't fault those numbers. Bryce, of course, has to be at the top. I mean, he just went into God mode. There's no way around it. When it comes to shooting, he has literally gone into God mode. It's almost like, it wasn't at Rucker's top 15 or something. He wasn't at number 1, and Bryce has now just turned around and gone, here, hold my beer.
So he was 8 last time, I think.
Yeah, can't fault it. I love when you get into like the PP40 and all that. The whole time I just keep thinking about a can of WD-40. So there you go. So I can't fault your analysis either, mate. At the end of the day, all I can say is that everyone in that top 5 deserves to be there. Would have, as I say, I would have just liked to see an X-Man up a little bit higher, but that might be just personal preference.
Yeah, I think it is. I don't think he's top 10 this year.
Yeah, Ryan's not a fan, Berto. Ryan's not a fan. You know what? Olgun Ulitso is definitely a fan. He's got it. He's got the MVP race as Bryce, Daylight, Xavier Cooks, Daylight, Kendrick Davis. That's his top 3. So yeah, he's pretty high on obviously Xavier Cooks, but he is also managed by the same guys that Xavier Cook is managed by as well. So maybe it's a bit of biasy there as well.
Right.
It's maybe also why I'm not getting paid for my basketball takes. Boys, it has been a fantastic episode. We've gotten through quite a lot today. Time has run out for us. For listeners and viewers, don't forget to check out all the team fan-driven podcasts, the Tasmanian Takeover, which Berto hosts, of course, leading the charge. The Kings Table, the Sydney Kings pod is up and going. Had Quatnoy on the show there last week. The Illawarra, the Hawks Hangout, a couple of degenerates running that one there, that they have a good time. The New Zealand Breakers one is good. It's hosted by a couple of local boys, young boys that are really into their basketball and the Breakers. So if you like the Breakers and you want to hear kind of maybe a couple of younger voices than the few us old boys on here talking,
sounding Kiwi voices as well. That's enough, isn't it?
Tune into them, and obviously the Wildcat wrap with Josh and Batty. And as Josh alluded to at the beginning of the show, the Brisbane, what was the name of that one again?
We haven't decided yet. We're going to call it the Brisbane Banter, but there's a bit of a correlation with the group chat there. So it's in discussions right now. We'll leave that with Tracy. She's going to figure out a name for that one. So I'm looking forward to seeing what she produces as well, mate. But that's going to be up and starting very shortly as well.
So much going on, and head over to thebasketballfix.com for game previews and articles written by not only us but by fans of the Basketball Fix platform and the NBL as well. Josh, the Instagram is going off. You're the meme god at the moment. Where can our fans find us?
The meme king, mate. I think sort of taking the throne one by one. But yes, you can check us out at the Basketball Fix podcast. Make sure you do go and check us out as well. There's going to be some great content obviously coming up, and there's also some collaborations with some exciting brands as well, which we're going to be doing very, very shortly. So a few little giveaways for the fans. So if you haven't jumped on the Instagram already, make sure you go and jump on there as well. And we also may do a sneaky little 1,000 follower giveaway as well. We're only less than 100 followers away now, Ryan, which is incredible. Only 3 weeks ago, we were sitting around the 450, 500 mark. So to double it very shortly is a massive shout out to everyone that has followed along and obviously jumped along the experience and the journey. But we're looking forward to seeing you all continue to jump on as well as we start to branch out into plenty of different atmospheres as well.
Fantastic. Berto, thanks for joining us today, mate. Jez is off next week, and we have a very special co-host that will be joining us. Stick around, check out the socials to find out who that will be. Boys, thanks for today, and listeners and viewers, as always, we hope you've gotten your basketball fix.
Clock at 10. Adams the off balance.